Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to Adrian's Digital Basement 2. On today's video, I'm going to be taking a look at some Commodore floppy drives. This all began because I wanted to test out this Enhancer 2000, I think this is called. This is a clone Commodore floppy drive that was recently sent in on a Turbo Mail Call episode. I actually have two of these drives because I have one that was previously sent in. That's this bottom one. But the top one is untested, and the viewer who sent it in didn't specify whether it worked or not. So I really wanted to test it out. But to test these out, I wanted to make sure that I had a working Commodore 1541. And on the bench right now, there's some loose screws inside. This is a 1541. Now it's actually a 1541-2. It's complicated with Commodore because there was the original beige one. Then they made this light cream color one, which I think was originally released for maybe the Commodore 128 or maybe the 64C. I don't remember exactly which one this goes with. The one difference on this one is that the original faceplate would have been kind of a cream color, and I've painted it to be black. Initially, I was actually going to convert this drive over to work with a Commodore PET using an IEEE type interface, and I thought that the black color scheme looked better on the faceplate than the cream one. Anyways, this is a normal 1541-2 in that it has currently stock ROMs in here, the Commodore DOS ROMs. And the other thing about this particular drive, only this one versus all the other 1541s, because there's a later version that's sort of smaller and less hot, and it has external power supply. This one actually has a track 0 sensor, so it does not headbang. Not with the appropriate ROMs for this drive in here, at least. It does not headbang. So that's kind of cool, and that's unique. And for whatever reason, Commodore discontinued the track 0 sensor. So even on the later 1571s, which are the drives on the Commodore 128, those are the double-sided drives, those headbang, and so does the later, smaller 1541 with an external power supply. I can't remember if these headbang or not, these Enhancer 2000s. I keep wanting to call them the Enforcer 2000, like Robotech, like Robocop. So if I mistakenly call these Enforcer 2000s during the video, I apologize for that. I don't know if these have the track 0 sensor or not. I don't think so. Now the one on the bottom, this is the one I've already had. This one works, and I have modified this to run the stock Commodore ROMs. It's actually running the same ROM as this disk drive, 1541-2. And even if it has or does not have the track 0 sensor, it doesn't seem to really have an effect. And the other thing about these drives, which is weird, which is really why I wanted to make this video, I wanted to test this out, is these have 65C02 processors, the later CMOS variant. And if you know your 6502s, the NMOS ones, those are the original ones, those have a bunch of undocumented instructions that when you execute them, they do different things. And it's very well documented exactly what they do. So programmers can take advantage of those undocumented instructions to actually shrink your code slightly, because those instructions, some of them do work and they do things that almost save extra instructions versus just using the actual valid opcodes. While that's specifically important for the floppy drives, is if you're using a piece of software that loads a fast loader into the drive itself, there is not very much free RAM available for executing extra code on the disk drives. There's obviously a ROM. You can replace that with like a Jiffy DOS ROM. You can do that on a drive like this, of course. But as an aside, Jiffy DOS does not work on these drives. If you try it, it runs, the code runs, but it's not able to control the drive mechanism properly. There's like some slight difference. But the stock Commodore ROM does work. Probably has to do with timing of like how quickly it can talk to the 6522s that are in here to move the heads around and stuff like that. Yeah, anyways, back to originally what I was saying. Is that with the stock Commodore ROMs, the ROM code itself is, executing the operating system in the disk drive, it's doing stuff, and the commands from the computer say, read this, do that, whatever. But you can load your own code into the RAM on these drives, 1541s is included, and you can directly control the mechanism, and you can implement a fast loader, and a lot of modern games and demos all do that. But because the RAM is so small on these drives, only 2K, and some of that's going to be used up just for the normal operating system that's on here already, free memory is so tight, the software developers will use those extra undocumented instructions in the fast loaders just to eke out every little last bit of memory in there. And therefore, I don't know about a conclusive list, but if you have the 65C02 processor, and this is the old version of the C02, by the way, the one that Rico released that was used in the Apple IIe and the Apple IIc, so it's pin compatible and everything, it can cause those fast loaders not to work. With the C version of the processor, if you try to execute an invalid opcode, one of these undocumented ones, it just I think it does a break, so it causes those to fail. So in this bottom one, I not only swapped out the ROM from the original Enhancer 2000 ROM to the stock Commodore one, but I also put in a 6502 processor, just a regular MOS one from a, I don't know, old VIC-20 or whatever it was. So that this drive now is, for all intents and purposes, acts exactly like a real Commodore 1541. What I wanted to see, because I've never seen it with the C version, is I have a couple demos that I put onto floppies. And I wanted to see if they work on a normal disk drive and maybe work on this one, but they don't work on the C variant. So that's sort of what got me kind of going with all of this stuff. I have the 64 sitting on the bench here. I have this 1541-2 sitting on the bench. I wanted to test it. Well, that's where everything kind of went off the rails. I never got around to testing one of these, and I was going to do it on camera anyways, but I just was getting my stuff ready to make the video. And, well, I'm having issues with the 1541-2 here. I'm having weird problems with this drive. And I don't know if it's the drive that's the problem. I don't know if it's my ZIF 64, which is what I have on the bench. I don't know if it's the problem, but something is acting up and being weird here. And I want to try to get to the bottom of it. Now, there's one other thing that I wanted to maybe work on in this video if it was going to be quick, like say the testing of these, because what I have here is a Commodore 1551. There was a video on the main channel where I tried to get this drive working. Now, obviously, this would have been in a dark brown or black color plastic case originally, but this was sent in by Mike, and it got smashed. Now, it didn't get smashed on its way to me. It got smashed on its way to Mike. Mike bought it, and it got smashed on the way to Mike. So Mike sent it to me, thinking that maybe I could use the parts and stuff like that. So yeah, the external case comes from a regular 1541 floppy drive, and the only difference is I did transfer over the little Commodore logo. That's the original dark color one. The biggest difference between this drive and the 1541 is very architecturally similar inside, except it has this, what is called a paddle. It's like a cartridge that plugs into the Commodore 16 and also the Plus4. And this gives it a parallel connection between the computer and the floppy drive. So performance-wise, it's much faster. Now, on those computers that use this 1551 disk drive, you can also just use a normal 1541 over just IEC, and it works. It's slow, just like it is with the Commodore 64. And I think there's Jiffy DOS you can load onto those as well, and then that'll speed that up. But this drive obviously gives you much improved performance compared to 1541. Now, what happened in that main channel video, and I'll link to it down below if you want to watch that first, but as a spoiler, I could never get this drive working. I could not make it function. It just always did really weird things. I can't remember exactly what it was doing, but it certainly wasn't able to read anything. And what makes it complicated is inside the paddle, there's electronics in here. This is not just like a pass-through to a multi-pin cable that goes to the drive. I'm pretty sure there's the equivalent of a shrunken down 6526 in here, which is the same CIAs that are inside of the 64, a shrunken version, less pin count, and a PLA. And what it's doing is it's looking and watching the bus over the connector, the edge connector, and then it's transferring any data on certain addresses over the cable to the electronics in the drive. And inside the drive, it actually looks pretty much identical to a normal 1541 disk drive. Not much is different in here. It's just the difference is that IEC connectors. It's got this multi-pin connector, which has those data bits and some other signaling and whatnot. And it goes into the disk drive. It's using a different ROM. So there are some basic programs you can run on the Plus4 and 16, C16 that is, and it will talk to the electronics in here over the paddle so you can make sure that PLA and all that stuff is working, because apparently those are very failure prone. Shocking, but yeah, they are. Anyways, it looks like all of that's functional, but yet this drive would try to read stuff and it would always get read errors. So what I ended up doing in that video, and this is the spoiler part again, is I ended up swapping tons of parts from this with this disk drive, the 1541-2, and that's because architecturally they're almost the same. This motherboard is pretty much identical, except for literally this and the ROMs. In fact, this hybrid module is the one out of this disk drive, and the one that's in here is the one from this disk drive. I swapped those. At the time when I was working on these drives, that didn't seem to make a difference. You'll notice that most of these are in sockets now, and I did that in my troubleshooting exercise. The SRAM, which is 2K, that is not, because I don't think there's anything wrong with that. The problem appears to be, I forgot exactly what it is, but I think it was this Hitachi chip. This is like a large special chip that's only for this disk drive, and I think that's where our issue is. In fact, this is pretty funny because this is a replacement one that Mike sent in, an HD61K615P, but notice the number of pins. And the one that's on here that I think is bad, HD61J2 215P versus K. Well, clearly those are totally different chips, not compatible. Not sure where this one comes from, but this is the one that we suspect is problematic. This is the 1541-2 disk drive, and it is different. It doesn't have that Hitachi chip. It's got this large one, the 64H156. But I learned from a lot of the swapping that I did that this chip is not compatible with the one in the other drive. These are not interchangeable. This chip is also on both drives. I swapped that. I had swapped all sorts of stuff, and really, yeah, basically nothing made it work. And as you can see, this hybrid, this is the one from the other drive. Right, so that was my long-winded intro of me saying that I have this disk drive, which at the end of the video where I was trying to fix the 1551, this one was working fine, but this one seems to be acting up now. The 1551 definitely does not work. There's something wrong with that. And the Enforcer or Enhancer 2000, the top one, I don't know if it works, and the bottom one, I haven't used it since I worked on it on the video. I think it was a mail call episode maybe, or whenever that was. I haven't tested it since. Oh yeah, and there's one more thing that I wanted to mention. I have this board that was sent in by a viewer as well. This is from a 1571, and this was from, this is spare parts. There's no disk drive to go with this. It's got a 61J215, which when we look at this, 61J215. So does that mean I now have that missing part to potentially fix the other disk drive? Yes, I think I do. What else is on here that might be on the other drive? Okay, so it's got a 6526. This is not plug-in compatible as far as I'm aware with the 64. I think it's slightly different, maybe? I can't remember, to be honest. We have two 6522s. We have a normal 6502. That's the ROM. This is the SRAM. This is the disk controller that handles the MFM encoding that this 1571 supports, not the normal GCR. And then, yeah, we have this chip. And this also has, no, not that one. It's got the special custom chip. I think it's this one here. This is the other little one that's, on all the other Commodore disk drives that is important. And then this also has the hybrid, which, if I can get to focus, 251-853-01. Okay, I realized what was wrong with the focus. I apologize for the focus on the top-down camera. I had it in the wrong mode. This is the one from the 1541-2, and it's 251-853-02, made by Fujitsu. And if we look at the hybrid that's installed in the 1541-2 right now, this is the one I wrote on it that came from the 1551, and it's a 251-853-02. So this is the same one that's in the 1571, at least that board that I have. So that's the same as this hybrid module, and this is the same PLA or custom chip or whatever this Hitachi chip is that's also in the 1551. So I think I have all the parts to make all of these disk drives work, obviously, except for this one, which is now just a parts donor, which is fine. That's what the purpose of it is. So what I want to do is I want to restore both of the 1551 and 1541-2 back to stock. I'm going to swap the hybrid module back. I never did that because in the video when I was troubleshooting the 1551, the 1541 seemed to work fine with the -02 or the -01 hybrid module in it. But apparently it is slightly different, and I really should swap it back. There are some electrical differences on the board that people clued me into that I didn't realize at the time. So I need to swap those back. And then I'm going to test the 1541-2. I just want to make sure that it works. So I'm just going to do a jump cut. I'm not going to show you the desoldering, and let's get to testing the 1541-2 on the ZIF64 and see if it works. Actually, you know what? Before we do that, I want to show you what it's doing right now. I have to plug the power back into the ZIF64. So with the ZIF64, oh, I lost all my video input, but there we go, came back. Okay, so we are in PAL mode right now. If I lift the cover on here, I have the Kawari in here. So this is, oops, I pushed a key on the keyboard. It is running in PAL mode. I have a SID kick installed in here, so this is a SID emulator, and the reason why I have that is specifically because the demos that I wanted to run, they need the 8580 SID chip. They don't work with the 6581, so I needed the SID kick. Otherwise, this is a stock 64, and it does have Jiffy DOS or Jaffy DOS installed, but I'm using, okay, what's happening when I touch the machine? It seems to crash. Do I have a bad or dodgy cartridge connector on here? Is that what's going on? I think this is unrelated to the problem, which I'm about to show you what's happening. Let's see if this machine, okay. Okay, it's fine now. I don't know. I think it was just a bad cartridge connector. Okay, so this thing has got Jaffe DOS on it, and the reason why I'm using the Easy Flash is because I can just load the stock kernel. Wow, the computer is frozen. Boy, oh boy, this video is freaking off the rails. Space. I'm just hitting the computer. Look at that, it's crashing. Really? Okay, let's take out the cartridge to see if it's crashing on its own. Let's see if it's just a bad cartridge connector. Yeah, see, it's fine. So I think we just have bad contact in there. I need to get the contact cleaner. Here is some deoxit. Deoxit that socket, that cartridge socket. Not surprised, I plug so much junk into this machine all the time, so the cartridge connector surely is just a bit worn out. Could have a bad solder joint, to be honest. Let's see if that made a difference. What I was trying to say is the Easy Flash allows me to pick the stock kernel, which this thing does not have on it. So that is one of the reasons why I'm using this cartridge. Still freezing when the cartridge is plugged in. Very interesting. But with no cartridge, oh, it's frozen. What happened? It's acting like this 6526 is in here, not in there. If I take it out, you'll see it just gives us, it will give us no flashing cursor. Or it gives us that. Oh dear. Oh no, this machine is failing or something. I don't think it should show us garbage. Yeah, that's what it does when you don't have this particular CIA in there. And if you watch the recent 64 repair video, I figured out that that socket on this machine was not soldered down for the longest time. I mean, it's fine now. Just hitting everything here, watching it, waiting for it to crash. Oh, it did just crash again. Wouldn't it be funny if I have other sockets that aren't soldered down? So it crashed when I poked in this area over here. And now it's fine. It's like percussive testing. I did reseat this RAM chip over here. Oh, okay, it crashed, but I think it's this socket right here, this ZIF socket with this RAM chip in it. Let's get that nicely seated. This is ridiculous. This is why you really need to verify that your test gear is working. Okay, this thing is, oh, it just reset itself. That should not have happened there. It should not have happened. So I'm wondering if my floppy drive problems that I've experienced and I wanted to show you are kind of related to this machine acting up. Right, okay, well, I think what I want to try doing first, I'm gonna hook up the floppy drive and I want to demonstrate the problem with the 1541-2 not loading software properly. And I'm not sure I can trust this cartridge because it's certainly crashy when that installed. Let's see what's going on, and I can't find my Easy Flash right now. First, we'll just go into the regular cartridge. Easy Flash, I was using it. In fact, it's funny about the Easy Flash. Oh, here it is. There's the SD card for the Easy Flash. And here's the Easy Flash. Okay, we can test with that in a second. Okay, so maybe there was just a flaky connection with the RAM chip there, because it certainly seems better now. Okay, good. I just powered on the floppy drive. It's spinning right now. I do have some disk in there. I don't know what it is. Let's turn this on. The disk drive just started spinning again. I'm going to hit 3 to jump into the stock kernel. There's the stock kernel. Let's see if we can look at the directory. Now what was happening is, okay, cool. This is the hat demo. What it was doing is occasionally I would like try to use the disk drive and it would kind of just stop. Like the drive would read a little bit or do something and then just stop spinning. And then the computer would just sit there with no error. And if I unplug the IEC cable, it would then say drive not found, you know, device not found, whatever the error is. Maybe it was all due to that flaky RAM chip and it was entirely the ZIF 64. Let's just see if this demo starts normally. And it loads for a little bit. And then what it does is you hit run and it will use its own internal fast loader routines to program the disk drive to work way more quickly. Okay, demo's running. These demos, by the way, are ones that I recently saw on YouTube because they pop up on my Explorer or whatever, suggested videos, and they were so cool. And Hat really blew my mind, had some amazing effects going on. Okay, well, anyways, it's loading fine. So I'm gonna break out of that. And okay, yeah, we're back at the thing. Let's see if we can talk to the floppy drive now. Now the drive is just spinning and it's not working, but I think that's because it still has the fast loader routines inside of it. And I wonder if I have to just power cycle the drive. So I'm just turning the computer off and on, which should reset this, but it might not be doing a hard reset, so it could still be using the fast loader routines. Okay, so right now, the LED is flashing. So it's unhappy. So let's just power cycle everything. Okay, so drive is back on after being power cycled. Computer's back on. Hit 3. It's very slow. This is the capture device, but there we go. And let's see if we can do a directory listing. Yeah, it's working. This is not what it was doing last night when I was playing with this. It was absolutely acting very strange, where even after power cycling everything just like I did there, well, yeah, okay, this is it. This is what it would do. You saw this load quickly before, and now it just sits here and does nothing. Now the drive is still spinning, the light is still on, but it should have loaded by now. It's not, the head's not moving, it's not doing anything. You'd see the, I don't know, you can just see the head there, but if I take the disk out, it should be unhappy about that. Nothing. It is not doing a thing. Now if I turn the floppy drive off, oh, okay, so maybe the computer I really feel like this might be a problem with the ZIF64 more than anything. I think after running these demos, you do have to power cycle the disk drive just to get everything kind of cleared out. But I also feel like the ZIF64 is malfunctioning in some way. So I'm going to try it without the cartridge so we have Jaffe DOS here. Let's see if we're getting any weird crashing. Nope, everything's fine. I'm going to pop this demo disk back in again, at disk 1. Let's see if we could just load directly. No, and the drive just stopped spinning. And this is what I was talking about. So what happens with Jaffe DOS or Jiffy DOS is it will say like found, loading. It will tell you where it's loading into memory, and it's just not doing it. Now we can take a look at once it comes up. So that command, what that should do is it should load the ready string out of the disk drive, and it will show us that like what ROM is in here. So Commodore DOS, or just okay, if that's the last thing the floppy drive did. And the floppy drive is being reset, so it's spinning right now. But if I turn the computer off, back on, it sends the reset signal over the cable. It should. Well, now the drive is just flashing, or it's a triple flash. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, 1, 2, 3. That actually implies there's a problem with this drive. So I'm chasing multiple faults here, I think is what's going on. Let's change tactics. I'm gonna take the 1541.2 out, put this on the floor, and let's grab the working or the known working Enhancer 2000. And I have a label on here that says this has a 6502 and it has the stock ROMs inside. I don't have the power supply handy, so we're gonna use this one here. This is the one that came with the other drive. Okay, so the power supply is connected, the drive is off. I have the IEC cable turned on, or plugged in. Let's turn the drive on first. Okay, the drive doesn't do anything. Oh, okay, yeah, this is a comedy of errors. I don't know for sure if this is the right power supply. It's got the right pin out. It's got 5 volts and 12 volts on it, which is exactly what the drive wants. Oh, now it's working. Okay, I don't know what happened there. So the light's on. Let's plug it back into 64, drive on, good. So there's an activity light that comes on and a power LED. Let's turn on the 64. Now Jiffy DOS is what's on here now. Okay, there it is. Commodore DOS 2.6, 1541. This is the stock ROM, like I said. Let's see if we can load one of these demos. I'll take it out of the other drive. Let's load the Hat demo. Let's see if we're still having weird behavior problems like we were just getting a second ago. I don't know if this drive, with this ROM fully loads everything, but let's just see if everything is working and if it fully supports this fast loader. Okay, so that works, correct. So we'll just load it the normal way. Now this is where it froze when I was using this cartridge. This is normal. And there we go. So let's do run. I don't know for sure if this demo supports using JiffyDOS or JaffyDOS in this case. We'll find out shortly. And it may not support this floppy drive either. Doesn't this seem to be taking longer than it did with the other drive? Right now the LED's on, but there's no head activity. So I'm gonna take the disk out. And I think this other disk here has a different demo on it. Let's power cycle the machine. Okay, that reset the disk drive. So there we go. We're back to the stock ROM prompt is what we would expect. So we'll just load it the very stock way here. This is a different demo, and I don't know if these even work with this disk drive, but let's just find out. These demos definitely require PAL, and I know these disks work. I did get them to load. I got them to load once on the other disk drive, the 1541-2. More than once, actually. And you saw one of them was working a second ago before the drive sort of freaked out. No, it's also not working. Now, this could easily be a problem with the fact that it needs a stock ROM. So let's just switch back to that and hit 3. Is this crashing? No, it's not. Okay, let's reload the stock loader. This is for Aloft. Okay, and hit run. I heard some head activity. This drive is very quiet, so it's hard to hear the head doing anything. The activity light is, well, it was flashing. Now it's solid. Sorry, I don't have a camera on it. Now what's interesting, by the way, is the activity light that's down next to the green power LED on these disk drives. That's the one that's controlled by the 6522. The one that's on the drive itself is actually just the motor on signal, so that is not controllable. On the 1541, the one that's on the drive itself, if I grab one of the drives off the floor here, this LED right here is not plugged. Oh, this LED here is not plugged into the motor on signal. It is controlled from the software. So it can do different things like flash error codes and stuff like that. And no, it is not working right now. It is frozen. But is that a problem with this disk drive? Or, you know, I don't think the disk drive is faulty. Is it? I don't know. Is this just a problem that it doesn't work on these Enhancer 2000s? Let's reset the machine and jump back into JiffyDOS. And yeah, okay, so unlike the 1541, when I power cycle the computer, that totally resets the disk drive because now we're getting that standard prompt. Very strange, everyone. Very strange. And of course, this lets us look at the directory listing, Aloft side 1. And for instance, it has no trouble loading whatever like the first file is on this disk. It's just when you hit run, that's where it gets unhappy. I'm going to chalk this up to problems with the disk drive. Slight differences on these versus the 1541-2s. I think something's just wrong with the 1541-2. I think it's having a failure of some kind. And that's what's causing these weird inconsistencies when working with this computer. Besides the fact that I clearly had an issue with this where, you know, I'd bang it and it would crash and do stuff. So some of it could have been that. This is a quick search for flash code or LED blink code. It tells us that the 3 flashes that we were seeing was a DOS ROM failure. And that was what it was doing kind of after I was trying to talk to the 1541-2, not these enhancer ones. So that kind of jives with the weird, unpredictable behavior. Maybe the ROM socket is bad or something's going on with the 1541-2. Currently is running the stock Commodore ROM. I don't think I showed that, but it has the stock ROM in there. I also have a JiffyDOS ROM I can stick in there. It's a EEPROM. Either way, I think we're dealing with a whole bunch of different scenarios and faults. The first thing I want to do is let's just see if these 2 Enhanced 2000s are working. I think the best thing to do is on this cartridge, I have the 1541 performance test. It's a diagnostic cartridge I think World of Jani wrote. If not, I'll link down below. And with that, you can just put a blank disk in here and it will completely, thoroughly test your floppy drive just to make sure it's mechanically working and the ROM commands are all working properly. Okay, I grabbed a floppy disk here that I don't mind erasing. It's not one of the demo disks that I've written. And we do performance test, P. And this will take a while. And this is a stock disk drive, right? Okay, did a headbang there. You know, even if it's had a track 0 sensor, I'm not running the ROM. The ROM that's in here is the stock Commodore ROM now, and you know, it's going to headbang. Okay, so it's going to take a while to run, so I'll just do a bit of a cut here, and we'll see if this Enhancer 2000 is working properly. While it was doing its performance test, I just spent a moment to clean up the most recent one, the one I haven't tested yet, and came up really good. Had a few scuffs and stuff on it. That's taken care of by some baking soda, a little bit of a melamine sponge or magic eraser. It's in pretty good shape. Now, incidentally, this is made by, well, it says manufactured by Chinon Industries exclusively for the Comtel group. Pretty sure this is a Chinon mechanism. They made these squeezy floppy drive mechanisms, which are kind of interesting. And I have a drive for the Apple II that uses that same mechanism, and it erases floppy disks if you power it off while you have it clamped. Maybe there's a fault on there, I don't know. And 100% of the time, well, I have 2 of these drives and both of them have the label missing. And that's frustrating because there's a kind of a cool rainbow color logo that says Enhancer 2000. If I had one of these with a label, I could try to like reconstruct it for the other one, but I don't have it. Anyhow, there we go. So it passed. So this drive is working, this Enhancer 2000. This is the one that has the stock ROM in it. Of course, it doesn't seem to load the demos. Is that a problem with my Commodore 64? Or is that a problem with the drive? Maybe to rule it out once and for all, let me just grab another 64. It needs to be a PAL 64. So this is the Commodore 64G, I think it's called. Yeah, 64G. This is an Aldi one. Unfortunately, this thing has some splotches on it. I think someone tried to retrobrite this. I think it normally is a lighter, whiter color, but the splotches, obviously from a retrobrite process, that went wrong. As far as I'm aware, this is a short board inside of here. It's definitely a PAL machine. So this should be totally compatible with this these demos. So let's see if this thing is still working. For some reason, the power LED is not coming on, but the computer is there, and we don't have too many jail bars. It's a little bit blown out, so I'm pretty sure that means it's a short board, because it's very typical for the short board versions of these to have to be all blown out like that. Let's take a look at this disk. I think it should have some stuff on it right now. This is the one that we did the performance test on. Yeah, okay, nothing's on here now, but it says test disk, so definitely worked and it's formatted. So this is Aloft. Let's test out Aloft. I'm just not 100% sure that my other 64 is fully operational, at least with disk drive stuff. I really never use it with floppy drives, because I always use a Kung Fu Flash or the Easy Flash or, you know, something else like that. So it's better just to try something else like this machine, and let's just see where the problem lies. If this doesn't load, then we know for sure. Oh, it's going to load this part, but if we try to run it and the fast loader doesn't work, then we know for sure this Enhancer 2000 is not compatible with the fast loader that this demo is working with, Genesis Project. So the drive is spinning. Okay. Oh, it works. You gotta be kidding. So there we go, confirmed. Something is the matter with my other computer. You're kidding me. Oh boy. So now I need to go back to the other disk drive, the 15412, and maybe it's fine as well. This demo, by the way, is just so cool. Yeah. The story behind this one is you're on a flight and you're using the in-flight entertainment system. By the way, look at that. You going into the borders, so cool. Using the in-flight entertainment system, and here's your user interface. Now you can't control it, but there's like 64 demos and stuff on the in-flight entertainment system. It's so creative. I really am amazed by it. But yeah, it's drawing in the, you know, in the border region, which is very cool. It's chopped off at the top a little bit, simply because of the capture device I'm using. But yeah, you can see the screen, you know, ahead of us to the left had the 64. And it loads incredibly quickly, you know, off these drives. But this is cool. Okay, so now we know this is working. It looks like it's still loading. I'm not going to say there's a fault here with it being a black screen. I did run through this demo on the other computer while it was working, with the other disk drive while I was working, and this is not right. The light is just solid on the disk drive right now, the activity light. We shouldn't just be looking at a black screen here. Okay. I'm going to stop jumping around here because this is a very chaotic video. I'm going to switch back to, or I'm going to switch to this other enhancer. Let's just see if this one works. This one has the 65 CO2 in it. Okay. Okay, there's something wrong with this disk drive. I can tell right away. It's powered up right now, but the drive itself does not actually spin when you turn the computer on. The activity light comes on, but that is it. So this thing is faulty. So that's going to have to be a future repair. Let's try Jiffy DOS, and let's look at what the, okay, so that's the enhancer. Wow, the video's blown out. Jailbar City. That's the RF modulator on the shortboards. On the PAL versions, it's terrible. Looks horrible. Anyhow, Enhancer 2000, we're talking to the disk drive, but yet it is definitely not able to read and write anything. I think this was, I forgot which disk it was, but one of these is the one that I did the performance test on. Let's see if we can read anything. No. So basically what it's doing right now is, if we look at the error channel, drive not ready. So we're talking to the disk drive, we're talking to the electronics that are in here, but the mechanism is faulty right now. Okay, so I put a label on here because this will have to be a future repair. Enhancer 2000, mech not working, IEC works. Interesting. Okay, so this is the one that was working a moment ago. I just want to try that demo one more time and see if it freezes in exactly the same spot. Mainly, I want to see if it's consistent. I'm pretty sure this computer is working perfectly fine. I want to see if it's consistent, and that might point to the fact that this drive is having issues, but it also could just be the fact that the way I wrote the floppy disk, this Aloft disk 1, is not reading properly in this drive, or it's got dirty heads or something like that. Now it's not even starting the demo, so this sort of leads me to believe that there's maybe a dirty head problem. Grab a cleaning floppy here, not that one. I need a single-sided cleaning floppy. You need to make sure when you use a cleaning floppy on a single-sided drive that the pad doesn't rub on the cleaning surface of the disk. It's kind of rough. So I have just a piece of plastic stuck on there. So a little 99% IPA on there. Let's get that in the drive. Turn it back. Turn the computer back on. Let's try loading something off it. I've had very good luck with this. Try a couple times. Oh, it won't do it because the drive is like, no, I'm not ready now. Just power the computer off and on. Okay, I can hear the heads moving around because it was head banging there. Well, that's interesting. It actually like put a brown smudge where the pad was pushing up on the floppy disk there, or, you know, on this plastic piece here. Interesting. So maybe the heads were very dirty in this thing. One thing we can be quite sure of with these demos is when they go to that super fast loader mode, they're not doing error checking and stuff like that. So if the disk has read errors, it's just going to kind of crash the demo. You need to have a fully operational floppy drive for it to actually work. Yeah, it's flashing like it's working now. I'm not sure. Oh yeah, sound. There we go. That's working properly. What I don't know for sure when I worked on this drive is if I actually ever checked to make sure that the heads were clean. I don't remember really. What I was trying to talk about with this demo, by the way, is yeah, you're simulating the in-flight entertainment system and you're on this flight from San Francisco to Tampa, TPA. And yeah, there's 64 stuff available on there. Wouldn't it be cool to be on a flight and actually have a 64 emulator on the freaking flight? You could write basic programs and play games and demos. I mean, that would be so cool. Lost opportunity for these companies. Now, where did this freeze? It froze right around this section. The screen went black where before it was going to show that demo full screen. Okay. So I don't think it was a read error before. I think it was a problem with the drive because, oh no, look, it worked this time. All right. So it's not well, it was a drive physical problem, just the heads were dirty, or and or it's not reading the disk properly. But there is the demo working properly. So funny, like I'm not used to this particular demo, so it's not like I know how it should perform on good hardware. So when you have issues with your physical hardware, you're left wondering, is it black screen because it's not working, because it's just taking a long time. That's a very cool effect, by the way, I gotta say, all on a 1 megahertz computer. It's incredible they're able to do all this. It really is mind-blowing. Now, these effects are very cool to me, very, very cool. The funny thing is, I was gonna do like a reaction a little bit to these demos, which I guess is what I'm doing right now. But I thought, like, testing out the Enhancer 2000, it'd be fun to watch these awesome demos at the same time. But then I ran into all these issues, and that's just how it goes, by the way. It just goes that way with this old hardware. It's freaking can be really unreliable, which is sometimes why buying a new computer, like if you buy one of those new FPGA Commodore 64s, this stuff is all just gonna work. Of course, you're not running on the real hardware, it's FPGA. I mean, of course, it's emulating the real hardware, but still, if you want to see it on something from the 80s, which is what's happening here, this is what we're looking at. Everything right now is original hardware. This thing does not have any modern replacements like the ZIF 64 does in it. Oh, flip disk. So this is really cool. So it's able to detect, that you take the disk out, and now I have to find the second disk. It's one of these, and I'm not sure which one it is. It might be this one. Oh yeah, there we go. That's the second disc. Cool. So look at that, drawing in the borders. All the borders are blown away right now with that effect. So cool. Music is great. Okay, anyways. I'm confident to say that the Enhanced 2000, when the heads are clean and you have regular 6502 in here, this demo at least works properly. I'm going to take the floppy disk out and I'm going to swap over to the other demo. Okay, here's the hat demo, disk 1. This has 2 disks, but I only made the first disk because I just ran into so many issues with the other disk drive that I never got to making the second disk. Okay, so Enhanced 2000, the working one, 6502, stock ROMs, and it's loading right up, no issues. So fast loader's compatible. It all seems to be compatible. Very cool. This demo hat also is extremely cool. It has a very cool story. Oh no! Well, that's a crash. Is it related to the disk drive? I know this disk worked again because I saw this actually running on the other disk drive, 1541-2, but clearly it's unhappy. We could still have bad, dirty heads on this floppy drive though. I think what I want to do now is I'm going to swap back to the 1541-2. I just want to see if it's inconsistent and crashy hooked up to this known working computer, this machine. 1541-2, the one that was giving us the ROM errors. This is hat, disk 1. See what happens. It's loading. Incidentally, you can't use something like a Kung Fu Flash, or at least not this version that I have, with these demos. And that's specifically because they need the 6502 in the disk drive and the RAM to load their fast loader routines in. It needs to be cycle accurate. And the drive emulation, at least on this Kung Fu Flash, is not compatible enough, so these demos don't actually work. I think I was trying to say before when it crashed is that this has the story of this kid who's learning how to code BASIC, and he actually goes on to learn how to code incredible demo effects for the 64. So again, the whole story is just quite cool. So the crash on the other drive came up shortly. Now again, we could have a fault in this crashed as well. What? Come on. Okay, so now I'm trying to load, after power cycling the computer, the demo again. And now we're getting 3 flashes on the disk drive. So I think this has a ROM error. So this definitely seems like what I was experiencing with the drive when I was using my ZIF64. Now the stock ROM that I'm trying to use is this one. It has very short legs. Now I'm wondering if we just have a contact problem in the socket here. Now it's this turned hole type or round hole type that I know a lot of people don't necessarily like. I like these, but they can have issues with these short-legged sockets, ones that came out of boards that had their legs chopped down. So I just put some deoxit in there, and we'll see if that makes a difference. Well, let's see if that makes a difference. Even though this demo is using its own routines for loading stuff very quickly, theoretically, it's actually still relying on ROM code. Who knows what it's doing. And it's potentially, I think the ROMs are supposed to do a checksum when they power up, but maybe there's an issue. Maybe this chip has failed. MOS ROM chips are known to be failure prone. Okay, so now it's doing the same thing that the other machine was doing. So it's not even flashing, it's not loading, it's not really doing anything. And if I power the computer off and back on, it should reset the drive. And now we're getting a flash code. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay. Well, all right. That kind of tells me what the issues were with this drive is that this ROM, which I can just take out with my fingers, by the way, either is problematic or it's probably problematic. And the weird thing is it must have failed because it was working. I was able to run demos on this drive and then they stopped working. And I don't think it's a problem in the socket. It would have gone away potentially by me taking the chip out and putting it back in with deoxit. This is the Jiffy DOS ROM that I had in here. Now, luckily, you can just use normal EPROMs to replace the ROMs. So that one's in there. Let's see if this works any better now. Turn on the computer. Now, this ROM, by the way, that's in here is Jiffy DOS. So it's not the stock ROM. But, I don't know if that causes incompatibility issues with this demo or these demos. Probably not, because a lot of people have Jiffy DOS ROMs in their disk drives and it would break those drives. Although back in the day, people put toggle switches on their drives to disable Jiffy DOS in the drive. So we'll see if this crashes at the same point. That was a good test there. And I suppose what I should do for this MOS ROM 251-968-01, I should probably try to read this in the EEPROM programmer and see if the checksum is wrong. Okay, it crashed as well. Now, if I reset this, will we get the same flash code? If I try to load anything now? 1, 2, 3. Yes, same error. So is this a problem with the disk drive now? Well, I don't know where to go with this. So maybe there is nothing wrong with this ROM chip, and somehow this demo is executing some kind of code that probably is causing it to crash in a way that creates that 3 flash code, because even this EEPROM that's in here is giving us that flash code, and that code that's doing that flashing is running out of the ROM. The diagnostic code is in this ROM. It's in this ROM, it's in this one. And that's causing the 3 flashes. If I turn it off and on, it kind of goes away. This is such a strange problem. And what's annoying is I know I have more 1541s, but I think they're like at my storage and I don't have them at hand. I have 1571s at hand, but I tried running one of these demos. I forgot which one it was, and it doesn't run on the 1571. Only it requires 1541. So are the problems that are happening with this drive right now, are these related to the fact that I have the wrong hybrid module on it, the one that's from the other disk drive? Is that possible? That hybrid, that black paddle looking thing, is used for the analog electronics, the amplification for the heads and stuff like that. It doesn't really have anything to do with the code execution on the disk drive. And what's happening here seems to be somehow related to that. What a freaking strange problem. And I guess the other thing is the enhancer doesn't, the one that, should work, ran the other demo fine. And I just turned it off after it ran for a while, after I cleaned the heads. But hat doesn't seem to work on it. What is going on right now? What is going on? I'm going to stop the video and just take a moment to kind of think And maybe I'll swap the hybrid modules around between this 1541.2 and the 1551 just to put them back in their correct location. And then we'll, I don't know, I'll go from there. You know what though, I just had a thought. Maybe this copy of HAT needs to be rewritten. Maybe it got corrupted. Maybe this disk is marginal. That's entirely possible. And you know what, I'm just making that disk right now. What I'm gonna also do is put it onto the disk I was just using, the one that just crashed on both disk drives. But I'm also gonna write it onto this disk. This is the one I did the performance test on that formatted correctly in the 1541, or in that drive at least. And because maybe there's a problem on this disk. And the way I write the disks, I'm using a grease weasel. There's no verify process. So it's quite possible that when it writes this disk, it's not able to even tell there's a problem. I don't know. This is one of the reasons why I really don't recommend floppy drives. Unless you want to exercise your troubleshooting skills, there are so many potential issues, mechanical problems, disk errors, computer problems in the disk drive, computer problems on your 64, cabling issues, just all sorts of potential problems. And you know, with this one here, I swear I saw this demo run much further than it's running now. On this disk drive, this one right here, hooked up to my ZIP64 was working. So something weird is going on now, and we'll just need to see if it's now a disk problem. Because am I grasping at straws a little bit? Maybe, but there we go. Just wrote this other one as well. Let's see if it crashes, and if it does, I'll swap to this disk, which I think is okay. It would have given us a format error on the other drive, the enhancer, if there was a problem with it. Okay, here we go. It's about where it crashes. It's good that it crashes early on. Crashed. Okay. And I'm sure it's going to be the same behavior if I turn the computer off and on. We'll get the 3 flashes on here as soon as I try to do anything. Actually, no, now it's 3 flashes. Okay. Same exact thing. Let's try this disk now. Got to reset the power on the floppy drive first because it's obviously in that bad crashed state. I suppose what I can do as well is once we try this, if this does work, then I sort of switch back to the stock ROM. See if that, no. The drive's not even doing anything now. All right, well this helps me. This helps me because this is what this ZIP64 was doing with this disk drive. It was acting just like this. Power cycle the drive, the computer, it would like not load a disk. And if I take the cable out, the disk drive's not even spinning, the lights, the activity light's not on. If I pull the cable out, it will say drive not found or not. So some routines are happening in this demo probably that get this computer into this kind of frozen state. And I think at this point, if we plug this back in and turn the computer back on, the drive just reset. And now it's flashing 3 flashes. One last test before I really have to go away to think. Now that I have 2 copies of this, including a fresh one, let's switch back to the enhancer, turn that on, put the disk, this is the one, I forgot which one this was. I think this is the second disk I made. Put this in here. And let's see if this crashes in that same spot. You know, we could be dealing here as well. This might not be a floppy drive problem at all. This could be a problem with this machine. Could entirely be a problem with this. But the weird behavior with it kind of causing the 3 blinks and stuff, that seems to be related to that disk drive. That disk drive is definitely problematic. Yeah, the demo is starting up. If this crashes out in that same spot, then I'm going to grab the ZIP64 and try this. You might be watching this and being like, I'm not learning anything. What you're learning by watching this is that troubleshooting these old computers is not always easy. And these demos push things to the limit. So they expose potential faults and issues with your stuff. And I'm just dealing with a bunch of stuff that none of it I know for sure works properly. I think for sure the 1541.2 is something's wrong with it. So we know that for sure. I know for sure the other enhancer 2000 is not working, the mechanical problem in there. I know for sure this ZIP64 was having issues where I bang it, it would crash. So that was happening. And then we know for sure that this had dirty heads, but now they're clean. It's working better. Here we go. It's about to load that next scene. So I made 2 copies of the disk again after cleaning the heads. So this is better than it ever... Okay, so this is working. So the disk stopped for a second, now it's loading again. Wow. So far, the Enhancer 2000, this one with the stock ROMs and the 6502 is the one that works the best after cleaning the heads. And it did freeze on this demo, but maybe that was a disk issue. So that's the one I rewrote. Yeah, look at that, drawing in the borders. Oh, it's so cool, and the music is great. So awesome, so freaking awesome. It's so cool. It's just really, really cool. But this is great. The demo's running, and now I want to switch back to the ZIF machine. So this is the kid now. He's freaking awesome. There we go. He's sitting down in his 64. He's got the hat on, the magic hat. Raster wall. Look at all that drawing in the borders. It's like they're not even there. The borders aren't even there. It's just like blowing out those borders. I mean, I have to imagine back in the day, the 64, like, you know, in the 80s, if you showed this to someone, or even anyone who designed the 64, and you're like, hey, we can draw in the borders like it's nothing. I mean, it's not nothing. They're cycle counting. It's a lot of hard work. But, I mean, yeah. Anyways, okay, I'm gushing right now. There's a bunch more cool effects in here. What we see happening is that this drive is working. This 64 is working now. It's played both demos without flaw. I think there was an issue with the disk. Let's switch back to the ZIF 64. And let's see if this machine is actually able to run that demo in a similar fashion. And that will sort of tell me that there's actually nothing wrong with this computer. And I just was running into all those other issues. So we're currently running with Jiffy DOS. So yep, that rebooted the drive correctly. So let's just restart the game, or the demo that is. And like I said earlier, I think what happens is this part's loading with the fast loader, with Jiffy DOS that is. Oh no, Jiffy DOS is not even in here. So that's just a standard load speed. And we run this, and now the demo's fast loader should take over entirely. Because like it's handling all the disk routines, and it's loaded its own routines into the floppy drive as well. And there is music, it's just sound is turned down. There it is. I gotta say as well, Sidekick, I loaded the latest firmware onto it. What a great project. What a freaking great project. It sounds really good. And I haven't done like an A, B, C, D comparison between like FPGA SID and all the other, you know, replacements. But this one is so good. And it's open source. And it's using a Raspberry Pi Pico. And what's cool is you can actually load software onto the Pi Pico and access it from BASIC. So I could load like, you know, 8-bit Dance Party right onto it, and it can load it off of the Pi Pico that's in the SID sockets. That's tricky and neat. But it sounds really good. Like I'm not wearing headphones, but compared to the 64 we were just using with a real SID, this sounds the same. Look, no crashing. No freaking crashing. Wow. Right, okay, well, like I said, I think I've gotten to the bottom of like what's going wrong. The Enhanced 2000 with the stock ROM and the 6502 totally seems to work fine, at least with these two demos and the World of Janny performance tests, no issues. Just make sure your heads are clean. 1541.2 is messed up. Something's wrong with that drive. I don't know what it is yet. Thought it was the ROM, but clearly not, because we switched to the EEPROM and it's also misbehaving. The other enhancer is bad. The ZIF 64 had a weird crashing problem, and it seems to be working now, so that's good. And the 1551 with the external panel, that's still not working. So there's so many issues. This is how it goes. But second channel video, that's why I'm on here. Yeah, every time I watch this demo, it's so cool. It's so cool. And shout out to the Kawari, which is what's in here for the VIC-2 replacement, by the way. Doing a great job with all of these tricks. It does have the very latest firmware on it as well. and so does the SID-Gig. Both of those have the latest firmware. I updated them before making this video just because I knew I'd be running these demos and they'd be pushing the limits of both of those chips. And yeah, freaking awesome. Freaking awesome. Incidentally, some of these effects use alternating color lines, and on a true PAL CRT, those would actually be average, and you'd be able to see solid colors that are not normal 65 colors or 64 colors. But the problem is the RetroTink doesn't do the averaging, so it doesn't; those effects don't really work. But they absolutely, on a real PAL monitor, would work. And instead of seeing alternating two different colors, it would actually average those colors together. So that's just a little effect of PAL color decoding, is you have half the chroma information vertically, half the resolution than you do in NTSC. NTSC doesn't do any of that kind of averaging stuff. But my 1702 monitor that I have upstairs that I've put that Chinese TV board into, it does the averaging, and it does it on NTSC, which looks kind of weird sometimes. You can like see that effect on like Apple II stuff. But for the 64, a lot of demos like this take advantage of that to create extra colors, and it just doesn't, the RetroTink doesn't do it. This is also a very cool effect with all those dots. I'm sure they're doing it to allow like the CPU to be able to like push the pixels, because it's just, you know, 1 megahertz, slightly less than 1 megahertz on a PAL machine. But again, it's drawing in the freaking borders and stuff. Amazing, absolutely amazing. And I think some of those extra colors might be visible on this effect as well with the true PAL color decoder, which we're not getting here. Right, what I'm going to let this do is run through the rest of the demo until it gets to disk 2, which I need to write onto this floppy here, and I just want to make sure that it fully completes on this disk drive and this machine combo. Here's the disk flip routine. So again, it's drawing into borders. Now it does have that weird like interlaced effect when it's in the border area, but it's talking to the floppy drive while it's waiting for me to flip the disk. Now I just tried to write the side B onto another disk, and I tried to put it onto the disk that I was originally using for side A, the one that was crashing and acting weird, and it would not write properly. It was giving errors. And I didn't realize, but the Grease Weasel actually does verify 1501 disk images as you write them. So I grabbed another disk here, and well, let me just double check it wrote properly. Yes, all tracks verified. So yeah, I said earlier it did not verify. It does verify. So something was definitely wrong with that other disk, and so I just threw it away. It's drawing directly in the border area with high resolution sprites. And I saw a video on YouTube kind of talking about how this effect works, and there's some amazing trickery going on. Like it's somehow using characters and like to mask some of the sprites, and those sprites are actually double wide sprites or something like that. It's really, really clever trickery. Now, the RetroTink's cutting off the top. That is there. The tops of those sprites are visible. It's just the Tink is configured to crop that off. But it would be there on a CRT if you adjust the, the horizontal or vertical down. But yeah, just very, very cool. He's going to add one more sprite over on the far right side, I think. Oh, look, they're drawing in the bottom as well now. Okay, and like this effect here, which is drawing this scroller in all the borders. I saw how this works. This is using sprites, and they're horizontally expanded, so they're double wide, but they don't look double wide here because it's like high resolution. It's doing this like alternating thing on every other scan line and trickery, but that's why like Thanks has, the K has sort of thick pixels because of the way the trickery works, but it's incredibly clever, super smooth. You know, just drawing completely in the in the borders. Again, it's just totally cool. And the music, so much is so good. And there we go, the demo finished, I think. Oh, not quite done. I was like, hey, I can't type. Something wrong, but no, it's not quite done. Anyhow, awesome. So this tells us now this disk drive and my ZIF64 are fine. There are no issues, and the problem was entirely with other things. Well, one benefit of these drives, by the way, is they run nice and cool. There's like no heat coming out of this thing whatsoever. And obviously we have 100% compatibility. Now I swap those two chips around. Right, so my decision at this point is, should I work on the Enhancer 2000 that's broken or the 1541-2 that's broken? I think I'm leaning towards this, but let me take a break have something to drink, and then I'll make the decision of what to do next. This video is pretty long as it is, and maybe that's a bit of a problem, and I should just leave both of these repairs to another video. Well, after a little break, I decided to come back and see if we can get this Enhancer 2000 working. My hypothesis for this drive is that there's something wrong with the 12 volts getting to the drive mechanism. So maybe something's unplugged inside, or potentially we have a problem with maybe the power switch, or maybe the DIN. We know this power supply works because it powers up the other enhancer drive. So we plug that in. What this was doing when we turned it on, oh, okay, well, what it was doing was that this light wasn't coming on, but this light was. So the error or activity light would come on, but then, yeah, nothing would happen there. And as you saw, it just worked. Let's turn the power off and on. Yeah, it came on and I heard the mechanism spin. So this drive, which incidentally was donated by Sam, that's why I wrote Sam there. Let's open it up. Let's take a look inside. I'm not sure, oh, I did open these up because I definitely switched out the ROM on the other one, the ROM and the CPU. If this is just somehow magically working at this point, then I think perhaps we have an issue with a bad connection, like a bad solder joint on the switch or the DIN jack, because that would explain it just suddenly having power. Don't know if it works yet, because we obviously haven't tested it, but obviously it's doing more than it was doing before, because without a doubt before, that red light never came on, and you never heard the spindle motor running. Okay, there it is. Ooh, that's some dustiness in there. Now, it's funny, when we take a look at this, I think the mechanism that's on this drive is connected with what would be normal Apple II signaling, so that the controller down here that has the CPU and the ROM is simply outputting the signal that an Apple II drive would work. That's my hunch, at least, when looking at this. Let me clean this dust off. There's a bodge wire there and a small bodge resistor. Let's just take a look at this thing a little closer up. The dust in this area is very caked on, but at least it's a little bit cleaner now. So we have a trace that was cut and a little bodge that was added, but I assume this was done at the factory. I may as well remove the drive mechanism, so we have to get down to that little board that's underneath, which you can just see it poking through the vents here, or showing through the vents. Obviously, that is where we have to check for bad connections to the power supply. Now, an Apple II disk drive, which I theorize is what this is, it's a good fit for this type of drive, and that's specifically because, did I get all the screws out? Yes, I did. That's because it doesn't have an index sensor, it doesn't have a track 0 sensor, it doesn't have the things that aren't particularly needed by Commodore drive. So let's pop this connector off, which is, it's got the same number of pins as this. That's why I think that's what it is. And Apple II drive mechanisms were relatively common. This has an 84 date code there, 36 week. Anything else that I can make out? Looks like third week of 85, so it sort of dates this from at least 85 or later, and Apple II mechanisms were very common and plentiful at that point. Now we can actually tone out some of the signals on here just to see if this is definitely for an Apple II, just based on just where the 12 volts and the 5 volts make their way to the drive. But obviously, first thing I need to do is we need to take this board out, and I need to get it working, or verify that it works, because it sort of seems to be working at this point. Well, we need to see for sure if that's the case. It looks like one fastener to take out. It looks like to get this out, you slide it forwards and up. There we go. Pretty nice mechanism, actually, the way that's retained by these plastic clips. Interesting that this was designed to have a crystal oscillator there, and instead they just installed a capacitor. I guess that just resonates at whatever frequency that it needs to resonate at, 1 megahertz probably. That would be for powering up to 6502. And this one does not appear to have a 65 CO2. Definitely the other one did. I would have to look it up, but I think this R6502 AP is just a standard normal 6502. Interesting. Incidentally, we have a few jumpers there. I bet you that's for drive selection. The design is relatively simple, but you have to think about, compared to a normal 1541, none of the drive electronics are on this. This just would have a motor on signal and head, step signals, stuff like that, phase signals. The drive read-write amplifiers and head movement drivers, the motor driver, all that stuff is obviously separate, because that is on this mechanism right here. So it's contained on this board, and if we flip this over, it's a direct drive motor, so no belt to worry about, JVC motor incidentally, and then this is the speed controller board. Anyhow, there's no power supply on here. As you can see, it's all external. That's another thing that simplifies it, of course. We just need to make sure that this switch is working and the DIN doesn't have a bad solder joint on the bottom. I don't immediately see any broken joints on the DIN, and same on the power switch. Power switch looks fine. This joint here looks a little suspect, but I don't see a crack. But I'm going to reflow those nonetheless. And well, it just could be simply that we had a bad connection inside this switch, and just turning it off and on a couple times is all it needed, and it fixed it. Okay, a little deoxit inside this connector, and I did reflow all these joints. I could put, oops, this is dripping out. I could put a little bit of deoxit in that switch, just to give it a little clean. Just move it back and forth a whole bunch of times. All right, let's see if this turns on normally. It does. Let me just check for, let's just check 12 volt. This chin-on floppy drive, by the way, is model F051A number 2, Rev B. And one thing you have to be careful of is this is not a shrouded connector where the ribbon goes on, so you can have it misaligned. And we know from Apple II drives that would definitely cause damage, since that sends 12 volts into the wrong places. All right, let's see if this thing spins as normal. Yes, the spindle motor is spinning. And I can show you that if I turn it off and turn it back on. There you go. So for the Disk 2 controller, this is pin 1, that's pin 2, this is 19 and 20. Pins 1, 3, 5, and 7 are all ground, and we can see that those are all connected. They are all ground. Pin 9 is minus 12 volts, and we can see on this side of the board, it's not connected to anything. If you're wondering if there's traces on the other side, no, it's single-sided PCB. So that matches again, minus 12 volts, not used on Apple II, most floppy drives that is. And then we have 10 and 11, which are 5 volts. And you can see that these are connected together and they go to this, which is probably a capacitor. So that jives. We'll just measure that with the multimeter in just a moment. And then we have plus 12 volts is 13, 15, 17, and 19. 13, 15, 17, and 19, plus 12 volts. This totally matches what we see on the Apple II. I mean, we haven't looked at this other stuff yet, but for the power side, totally matches. So we've established this is ground. Let's turn on the power to the drive. And this is supposed to be the 5 volt pin, and it is. And this is supposed to be the 12 volt pin, and it totally freaking is. Okay, so the next signal is pin 20. That is write protect. Let's see what that's at right now. 0.12. I'm just gonna put a disk in. I'll put it in upside down so it's write protected. So that will show up as write protected. Let's see if that changed anything here. Yes, that is at 5 volts now. So if we take the disk back out again, because I had it in upside down, so it looked like write protected, this should be down to a logic 0 again. There it is, 0.12, confirmed. And then we have this signal here, which is the enable signal. So if we activate the disk drive, then this signal should be low. Now, of course, the only way for me to test this is to hook up a computer to it, but it's sitting high, which I'm pretty sure is correct. It's active low signal, so it's a /enable. And yes, by the way, this has some kind of like coating on it, and using the alcohol kind of made it all sticky. And that's why the dust had stuck to it. I think it's just flux, basically, that had never been removed. Like, you can see how sticky it is right there. So I think what this means is that if you have one of these disk drives and the disk drive itself is physically not working or damaged, you could replace this with an Apple II floppy drive, the top part. And what's really funny, and just think about this for a second, the company that designed this board could have made a little module. Just imagine a little flat module with a couple LEDs on the front, IEC ports on the back, power switch, and the power input. And you could have just connected up one of your Apple II floppy drives to it and actually had that as a converter between an Apple II floppy drive, an external Apple II floppy drive, and a Commodore, allowing you to use the Apple II disk drive directly on a freaking Commodore. And just for total fun, if this thing works, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna hook up an Apple II floppy drive, a full height normal Apple II floppy drive to this controller. I wanna see it running an Apple II floppy drive. Everything's connected back up. Let's put this disk in here. I don't remember which disk this is. I think this might be one of the demos. Okay, it's talking to the drive. Excellent. Drive is spinning. Oh yeah, it totally is working. I didn't try to clean the heads or anything. Now this is using the stock enhancer ROM, which I have no idea. Oh, I must have loaded disk 2. Yes, I did. Wow, that's kind of cool that it actually just goes right into the demo. But it is working. I think this is hat. Let's power cycle this again. So if we take a look at, oh, this is Aloft side 3. Okay. So this disk is hat side 1, I think. Now this is curious because what we're doing now is we're taking a look to see if these demos work with the stock ROM and whatever CPU is in here, which I don't think is a 65C02. And it's possible these demos just work anyways. But let's find out. Yep. Run. So one of the things that's interesting here is potentially one reason why the ROM that's in here would be incompatible with a demo like this is it might have a different memory map, slightly different. I know the drive itself has the same memory map as a real 1541. They couldn't copy Commodore's ROM. They had to use their own. So where the variables are stored in RAM might be different, but I suppose if this thing is able to take over execution from the ROM anyways by putting its own routines in RAM, then it doesn't really matter as long as the routines are copied into RAM using this ROM, and it appears that that is the case, at least what we see happening here. What I really need to do is find a 65C02 ROM, or CPU that is, and put it in here maybe, and see if that prevents these demos from running. But let's see if this crashes on the next phase. No, I mean the drive accessed. This is where it was crashing before. Okay. Well, I'm fully assuming that the reason why this drive wasn't working before with my little label here, mech not working, was simply a power problem. Sort of my hunch, actually. That seems to not be the case anymore. This drive seems to be totally working. There it is, the hat. And we get that full screen border busting stuff happening, yeah. Now, I don't think there's any kind of benefit to using the Enhancer 2000 ROM that's in this drive versus just swapping it out with a regular Commodore ROM. You could just use an EEPROM to do it. And I really don't think there would be any reason why you wouldn't want to just run Commodore's ROM in this drive, in the controller at least that's in here. I think what we'll need to do is swap over to Aloft and make sure that that works, because we were having some crashing issues, not with this drive, but on the other bad disk drive with it. So let's power this off and let's swap to the Aloft series. I never remember the command for loading stuff on Jiffy DOS. I think it might be a slash. Say I'm going to type the whole load stuff out. Yeah, okay, that was it. So /star. Or slash file name, of course. Okay, demo's running. It's working. The drive activity light's blinking just like it did on the other one with the stock ROM. Anyhow, this is pretty interesting, isn't it? So when they designed this controller for this Apple II disk drive, they completely copied all the physical locations in memory, in the memory map of, say, where the SRAM is, where the 6522s are, and even all the commands to move the heads around, all that stuff's the same. So from a hardware level, they copied the 1541, but they couldn't copy the ROM, because in the 80s, it was the ROM itself that was the copyrighted part. So that's why it's using this Enhancer 2000 ROM. But because the hardware is exactly the same, you could just swap out the ROM with the Commodore one and it works. Still doesn't fully explain why it doesn't work with the Jiffy DOS ROM, but I'm wondering if that's because it's potentially running at a different speed, like the clock speed's off a little bit, and that upsets the routines, although it doesn't seem to affect the fast loader in this demo. Here's where the crash was coming up. What I can do is take the ROM for the 1541-2, the Jiffy DOS one, and put it in here and see if that works. Let's just, for completeness, take that ROM. I'll take the EEPROM that's in the 1541-2. Yeah, let's put it in here. Let's see if Jiffy DOS works on here, because now's obviously the time to do this while the drive is all apart. Out with this COMTEL ROM, and in with Jiffy DOS from the other disk drive. Also, another experiment I should probably do is we should measure the clock speed on this versus on the other one. And I just want to see if it's exactly the same or how far off it is. Okay, turn it on. Drive came on and turned off, so that was normal. Let's see what we get back. There it is, Jiffy DOS 5.0. Let's try loading something. I don't think this is going to work, but let's give it a try. So it's not like it's head banging exactly, but the head keeps going back and forth. I mean, look, it was able to finally like read the directory, but that's not working. See if we can load this. Wow, it did actually load that. Okay, and I think what happened here is the fast loader in the demo took over from Jiffy DOS. So it's working fine at this point. Like it's running the demo. But I'm going to put in a disk that we can try formatting or doing stuff to, and I have a feeling that it's not going to pass the performance test if we put in the cartridge and run the 1541 test on here. So we'll do a performance test, and this is Jiffy DOS ROM with Jiffy DOS ROM, so both Jiffy DOSes. So we head bang, and the disk is formatting without an issue. That's going quickly, of course, because it's using the Jiffy DOS format routine. I think this World of Janny thing here. Oh no, here it goes, having an issue. The head keeps going back and forth, back and forth. Huh, it's funny how it says mechanical test is fine when that's clearly a lie. So it's doing a close file, and it's doing that same thing. The head's just going back and forth, back and forth. I mean, it's funny because it's passing the tests, but this is not how it should work. It's really not. It's doing that head thing again. It's not banging, but it's just kind of going back and forth, like it's having read-write errors. Not sure that comes across on the microphone. I don't think it will. But this scratch file should just take a split second if this were working perfectly. All right, well, it says passed, but it made a whole lot of not working unhappy sounds while it was running. I'm just going to switch back to the, well, I'm going to put back in the original Commodore ROM in here, and we'll run this again. I think it will be slower, but it won't make any of those like head issue noises. And I might as well just use the ROM chip out of the 1541-2. I just realized you can see a lot better if I change this camera view to this one. So let's run that same test again. I should turn on the disk drive first, though. So let's do performance test. Now remember, this is the stock ROM. Okay, here goes the format. Yeah, a lot slower, that's for sure. This is just a basic program, this performance test, and I think it's just sending, opening the command channels, just sending normal ROM commands to the built-in ROM on the disk drive, the OS on the disk drive, and basically telling it, hey, format the disk, or read that file, or scratch that file. So it's just running through the whole gamut of various tests. So with the stock ROM, these accesses are just much slower. And that's one of the benefits of Jiffy DOS. It just speeds up, all these DOS commands big time, especially when you're using them in conjunction with Jiffy DOS in the machine. But if the machine is running Jiffy DOS like this, and it tries to communicate with a drive that doesn't have Jiffy DOS, it just falls back to standard routines, which is what's happening now. So it's still formatting the disk, the head's just moving quietly and slowly, no weird activity. But we'll see once it starts creating and scratching files, if this, is going to do the back and forth thing, which you couldn't see on the last pass because, of course, I had the view wrong. Maybe I can zoom in a little bit so you can see this a little more clearly. Sorry, I just can't move the Commodore over any further. Oh, I can move the camera a little bit. There we go. Move this a bit closer. Uh-oh. Well, that didn't even work. Huh. It's totally entirely possible this disk is bad. So I'm just going to give it a format on my 360K drive here. We'll just make sure that this is fine. This validates or verifies the disk as it formats it. Actually is formatted as a DOS disk, regular DOS 3.3, MS-DOS that is. So let's see if this disk is good, because I pulled it out of my bin of unformatted, untested disks. Could easily be bad. Also, it could be I need to clean the heads on this floppy drive. Maybe I should do that as well while we're here. All right, well, disk verified without issue. Okay. What I did is I put the cleaning disk in here. So let's let that try to, yeah, you push continue, it doesn't actually work. So that's funny. Okay, let's do that format again, and let's see if this works. That's after cleaning the heads slightly. Okay, what's really funny here is it never homed the heads. So I really need to reset this because what it did, and the drive is just sitting here. Yeah, there we go. It did not bang the heads, and it absolutely needs to. So let's do head exerciser, and we'll bump to track 1. You totally did not do that. All right, I don't know what's going on. The drive is stuck in some kind of weird mode. I'm going to turn it off and on here. The head should be out here. I just did a quick speed check. Looks like speed's really good. 300.6, no problems. Right, let's do the format again, or let's do the performance test again, and see if this thing works. You know, what's going on? When it formats the disk, it should start, I think, from the outside in. I thought. I mean, it's just going to hit the end stop here in a second. Yeah, it's at the end stop right now. I don't know what's going on here. I really don't know. Well, why don't I try fast format here? We'll just do whatever. I mean, it's obviously not going to work. It's unable to seek the head that way. What is happening here? So I'm trying to figure out what's going on here. It doesn't seem to ever move the head back this direction. It's only moving towards the spindle or the center of the disk. And I think what might be happening is the track 0 sensor. Track 0 is over here, like on the outside of the disk. I think what might be happening is that the track 0 sensor input onto the 6522 that this ROM from the other disk drive looks at must be tied to a low or high or whatever that makes it think that it's always on track 0, because it doesn't seem to ever go back to track 0. All right, what's funny is that Jiffy DOS worked better than the Commodore 1541-2 ROMs that are in here right now. These ROMs really don't work properly in this disk drive. The label on my other one says that's the ROM that I put into it, this one, but obviously not. And as I mentioned, the track 0 sensor, where this drive does not have, on the 1541-2, it's connected to one of the inputs or outputs on the 6522s. And on this drive, it must be floating or not connected. And if this ROM works in my other version, and I don't know why it works there and not on this one, obviously, but if we put back in the original ROM, I'm sure this is going to work just fine. Like, we'll do the validation test, and it will not have this weird issue anymore where it gets stuck up here on that part of the drive. All right, so we do 1541 again, and now we do performance test, and we are running the stock ROM now. And there we go, heads moving normally. Oh, it did fail to format. That's weird. Let's try to reset and try that again. Okay, there's a normal head bang. It just fails immediately. Oh, you know, maybe it wouldn't fail if I put a disk in the drive. Okay, head bang, normal. And it's formatting normally. So the 1541-2 ROM is absolutely, without a doubt, not compatible with this drive. Oh, and you know what, everyone? I know why. The ROM that I have in the other one is not the 1541-2 ROM from this 1541, the one that has the head 0 or track 0 sensor. It's from the later 1541s that are the cost reduced, or I don't know, shrunken ones with the external power supply that don't have the track 0 sensor. That's the ROM that I put in the other one. And I labeled it 1541-2, but I think it's this one. Check it out, 1541-2. This version only appears in drives with Neutronics mechanisms with belt drives and no track 0 sensor. Released in 1987, and the part number 251-968-03. No, this is 251-968-01, which is this. Oh, 1541C. I kept calling it the 2, but it's the C. This firmware of an old style 1541 in a white case, the drive was introduced around the same time as the C128 and the 1570 to make it look like the C128. This drive has an optical track 1 sensor, but won't be used unless jumper J3 is cut. And definitely my bad. The whole time I've been calling it 1541-2. It doesn't say that on the front. It just says 1541. And this is known as the C variant. That's what's going on. You cannot use that C ROM in here. But if I take the EEPROM and I replace it with the 1541-2 ROM, it will work. There is actually an updated ROM for that drive. check the release notes. Let's see what the release notes say. The interrupt rate change from 15 to 8 milliseconds for slightly better performance caused compatibility problems with some software that used its timing for its own purposes. It is now 15 milliseconds. 1541B board has trouble accessing tracks beyond 35, attributable to the new data separator, although the problem always existed, and then some other fixes that have to do with the OS have been implemented. This ROM will not work in earlier 1541 PCBs, which require different size ROMs, among other board differences. Okay, yeah, we knew that. Well, that's interesting about this. Could this have something to do with the problems that I'm seeing on that 1541C drive? Maybe? Here's a text file that was on Zimmer's talking about the difference between the 1541-2 and the 1541C ROM, the one with the optical sensor and without. But look down here, it says here, but why does the ROM not work if the light barrier is unconnected? Light barrier being the optical sensor, and it's not on this drive, it doesn't exist. Looks like the sensor is connected to the open collector. That means it only produces an active low signal whenever the light fails. And it says here when it's not connected, like it would be on this, PA0 is just open, which is the same as when the light beam is broken. The pull-up resistor now puts the input signal to high, which says to PA0 that the track 0 is reached by the head. And if this condition becomes true, the ROM routine prevents the head moves to the outermost tracks. That's the reason why the head moves inward only, and the ROM prevents the head moves towards the outermost tracks, and that's the reason why the head moves inwards. Okay, that's exactly what we were seeing. So that confirms the symptoms. Cool. So if you have one of these enhancer drives, the thing I recommend doing is swapping out the ROM with a regular EEPROM 27128 using the 1541-2 ROM for extra compatibility, and then also swapping out the CPU. If you have a 6502C, I think it's called, or CO2, or whichever one it is, then swap that out with a regular 6502 also. So that way you have no issues with fast loaders. This one has a 6502 AP, which I think is just a normal one, so I don't need to switch it out. And then you saw the Jiffy DOS kind of works, and it's funny, it works better in this drive. I remember in the other one it didn't work at all, but it basically just causes the head to move around a lot and it basically keep having errors reading. So I don't know why that is. It probably something to do with the clock signal or the timing, something like that. Now here I'm in the service manual for the 1541. It talks about the fact that it has a 16 megahertz clock and it uses a divider to divide it down to these various different frequencies, and that's because the data rate is different on these different ranges of tracks, so it can pack in more data onto the disk between 1 megahertz and 1.2307 megahertz. There's a 16 megahertz crystal module that makes its way down to this divider, and we should take a look and well find this chip on here, 74LS193, and look at the clock input on pin 5. Well, whoever designed this board must have changed it up a little bit because the designers, they fed the clock signal into a 74177 on the original 1541 and also the 193. But on here, I only really see it going into this 74LS04, which is obviously just to take the clock signal and invert it or something, or turn it into a square wave. So there's the signal. It's 16.04 megahertz. And indeed, there it is coming out of the other pin right next door. And now it would be a square wave. It's just this oscilloscope is not that good, so it can't really show that that is a square wave. So that must make its way to other chips on the board. Let's see if I can find those two chips. They're just somewhere else. 193. Well, I don't see a 177 or a 193, so I guess they just simplified the design and got rid of those. Well, if you want more precise crystal control on this, you'd want to swap this out with an actual oscillator. Touching it with my finger doesn't really seem to change it. This is not the most accurate frequency counter. I know you can't really read that, but it actually says 16.04, but I just don't really know if that's even close or accurate at all. Now the CPU that's on here is the R for Rockwell R6502AP, R650X. This is the data sheet for it. It's N channel, so NMOS, not CMOS, and it's very hot, the chip in here on the disk drive. I'm just touching it right there. And here's our part number decoder, so R6502. So we have an O2 as the model designator, A for 2 megahertz, no letter for 1 megahertz, and P for plastic dip. So it's just a normal 6502 on here. I'm 99% sure that the other one of these disk drives, the other Enhancer 2000, had the CMOS version of this chip, the Rockwell one, which I'm pretty sure is this data sheet right here, the R65C02. CMOS silicon gate technology, so it's not NMOS. That means it runs a lot cooler. And right here, pin compatible with the NMOS R6502. That's this version. And this is, I'm positive, is the version that was put into the Apple IIe and the IIc and my other one of these disk drives. And very specifically, the reason why this was an upgrade for the Apple IIe and the IIc, and some IIes didn't have this, and you have to actually get an enhancement kit, which would give a new ROM and a new chip, is right here. 12 new instructions for a total of 68, and 59 new opcodes for a total of 210. 2 new addressing modes, 7 software operational enhancements, and 2 hardware enhancements. And then, of course, the other thing that was a benefit was lower power consumption inherent in CMOS technology. So the chip didn't get burning hot like this one is here. And all of these with parentheses 1 are the new instructions that are not available on the original version of the CPU. And I think that's one of the reasons why this broke compatibility as well for stuff on the Commodore or disk drives, that is, because these are replacing what were invalid opcodes with these new instructions. And if you have a machine that, of course, always has one of these processors, like an Apple IIc, then programs can be written to take advantage of these and get a little bit of a speed boost or whatever you would get from that. But then the problem is, if you have a program that's written to take advantage of one of those old opcodes in one of these locations, well, that's obviously going to cause it to break. And I guess that's why that CPU in the floppy drives is not always the right thing to do. And don't leave it in there, take it out. And look at this, very well spelled out. Execution of invalid opcodes. Some terminate only by reset. Results are undefined, but well understood. On this new chip, all are NOPs, or no operations, and reserved for future use. So that's the thing that broke compatibility. It's right there in the datasheet. But we now know for sure that this floppy drive does not have the C chip in there. It's just got a regular CPU in there. It just has the Comtel ROM. So for ultimate 1541 compatibility, you want to replace the ROM with the 1541-2 ROM and replace the CPU if you have the CMOS variant. Otherwise, like this one, you can just leave it in. So I think my final test for this video is let me grab an Apple II floppy drive and let me try connecting it up to this board. And let's see if, yeah, this is indeed just a standard Apple II floppy drive. I'm going to say 99.999% this is an Apple II drive, and any Apple II drive should work on this. Now, one thing that will make this a bit harder is this cable is just connected into the board permanently. So I went and grabbed this disk 2 floppy drive, but I can't just plug it into the board. I'm going to have to take this drive apart and then connect this little pigtail into the drive. With the floppy drive open, this is Apple's analog card on, I think it's a normal Sugar drive, I can't really tell. Either way, pin 1 is on that side, so I have to flip this around. And for the initial power on, so you can kind of see it spinning or smoking or whatever's about to happen. Here we go, 3, 2, 1. There we go, the drive spun for a second. All seems normal. I think this is Aloft. Pop in Aloft. And let's see if a directory works. Yes, it freaking works. It totally works. Well, oh, we got a headbang there. This drive I haven't used in a long time, so it could easily have, dirty heads. Let's clean those heads. So let's try loading something off this with the cleaning disk in there. Should headbang a bit, which it is. Okay. I will try Aloft again. Directory. Oh, there we go. But look, it's still not reading the same spot. Again, this Apple disk drive may be not working perfectly. We'll try loading the demo anyways and see what happens. I mean, it's obviously working. It's just, I think this drive is not working great. Could be the speed's off too. I should probably check the speed on this drive. So now the fast loader's taking over. Yeah, I'm not sure this is actually working. What I can do here is we can do speed test. Should work. Error. Rude. I don't understand how it's erroring out. It doesn't even spin up the disk drive. How could it even do that? We'll try the performance test. I wonder if the speed test doesn't work on the Comtel ROM. It's currently formatting the disk right now. Well, it doesn't appear to be working 100% perfectly here, but you can see that it is controlling this disk drive. And without a doubt, I think if this drive were in perfect tip-top shape, it probably would work. It's obviously creating the files. It formatted this disk. Curious now if we can do a directory on this disk. Yes, test disk. Okay, so it's definitely reading this disk now after formatting it. Let's try, this could be a marginal disk with Aloft that it's not happy about. Let's go back to the other demo, hat, which is this 2-disk set here. Let's see if it can load one of these. Here we go, let's see what happens. I can hear the head doing stuff. Oh, head bang. Okay, well, head bang again. So I have a feeling the demo is likely going to fail just because the drive's not really reading properly. I think I picked a bad disk drive here to test with, even though physically it's really clean and nice. So I put a little shiny piece of tape on the spindle, and I think I can check its RPM using this gauge. There it is. You could just read it, 308.6 RPM. And of course on this, the speed control is not available on the side. You have to go straight through to the back. Okay, I tried to adjust it and it's actually closer now. It's at 300.7. I just sort of got the screwdriver on there. So let's see if it reads the directory any better. That seems better, doesn't it? It's not head banging. Okay, it's at 301 RPM now. It's gone up a little bit, but the demo is definitely not loading. Kind of loads for a bit and then stops. I put the enhancer back together. I just want to see if the performance test does finish on this disk in this drive. I think I did test this earlier. I didn't show it on camera. There's a head bang as it starts the format. It appears that the other Apple II drive, the actual disk 2 drive, works, but not great. But it could be that that drive is out of alignment. It could be that drive has some speed issues. It seemed to be running a little bit fast. It could be that the differential amplifiers on that drive are also drifty a little bit. I haven't used that drive in years. I just went upstairs to my office and grabbed it. So I think I can't fully trust it. For sure, what this tells us, though, is that the controller that's on the Enhancer 2000 totally drives Apple II disk drive. So like I said before, if you have one of these and the drive mechanism's gone or broken, or you desperately need an Apple II mechanism, you could take out of this drive and hook this directly to Apple II, and I'm sure it's going to work. There is this bodge and this resistor. Could somehow those have something to do with tuning this mechanism to work better with the Commodore GCR signal versus Apple IIs? Maybe. All right, there we go. So it passed. So this mechanism with this disk and that COMTEL ROM makes everything happy with the performance test. So with this whole experiment of trying the Apple II drive, what's really funny about it is you have to remember that this drive with this simple controller and this chin-on drive that's in the enhancer would just plug directly into an Apple II with a Disk 2 controller, which literally has just a handful of inexpensive chips on it. And that's all you needed for an Apple II to use a floppy drive. And compare that to Commodore's 1541 or this Enhancer 2000, which of course is emulating it. It is absolutely, without a doubt, a fully featured 1 megahertz 8-bit computer in here. I don't think that's a secret to anyone, but it's got a 6502, two 6526s, 2K of RAM. I mean, you could give it, 48K of RAM and run full software on it. Memory map's not really suited to that, just the way it's designed. But ultimately, all the components, except for like a video display, to make the 1541 or this Enhancer 2000 a real disk drive are there. So when you take a drive like this, or the chin-on drive, and you plug it into the Enhancer 2000, it's kind of the same as just plugging an Apple II disk drive into an Apple II, but you don't need the whole extra CPU and all that stuff. So it really goes to show you how ingenious Woz's design was with the Apple Disk 2 disk drive system. Not needing a floppy drive controller, really, and using the CPU in the computer to do the heavy lifting to actually drive the heads, because that's the way these work. The motor on and off signal is controlled by like a memory location, and then to move the heads, the stepper signals themselves are coming from the address bus, if I recall, on the Apple II. They're just encoded and sent over the wire and go to the disk drive. That is the stepper motor control to move the heads back and forth, and the read and write is just some extra signals. Simple and really elegant design. And that's obviously what the 1541 is doing, and obviously what the Enhancer 2000 is doing. It's just the Enhancer 2000, the connections that go from the 6522s don't go through a bunch of other discrete electronics. They just go directly to an Apple II compatible signal to drive an Apple II disk drive. That is really quite funny. And I don't think I'd ever read that about the Enhancer 2000, that it is just driving a normal Apple II floppy drive. How wild. Anyhow, that is going to be it for this video. It was a total tangential filled interlude of disk drives. And I'm glad I figured out everything I figured out. So where do we get to in the end? My ZIF64 was acting a little weird, but it's fine now after I reseated the RAM chip. It could be that that socket is not even soldered down. I wouldn't put that past myself right now because of the other one that was not soldered. But now that works, I know that this machine, along with the 64G I was testing with before, do fully function and are able to run both of those demos. I learned that my 1541-2, or actually it's 1541C sitting here, is faulty. There's something wrong with this drive and it's acting weird with its own ROM, which happens to be sitting here, and also Jiffy DOS, which happens to be sitting here. So both of those act the same weirdness in here. So I need to troubleshoot and fix this. I have a hunch it's maybe the SRAM, maybe? Bad connection, maybe? I'm not sure. Either way, we have problems. We have problems. And then the 1551 I never even got to, but it looks like I have the right parts with the extra spare board that was sent in by a viewer to get that drive hopefully up and running, because I kind of have all the parts I can replace almost everything on there, and that's great. And then the other Enhancer 2001 I already had that I replaced the ROMs on previously, that just had dirty heads. And once that was done, it was fine. And then this Enhancer 2000 wasn't spinning the disk when I turned it on. The driver electronics were working, but not the disk spindle. But those work now. So it was either a dodgy connection on the DIN, or maybe the power switch, or a bad solder joint. So I just reflowed that and it's been working perfectly ever since. And then the last thing, as you saw, we can use an Apple II disk drive on an Enhancer 2000, which is just really funny to me. So there we go. If you enjoyed this video, then appreciate a thumbs up, but it was good for me because I kind of sorted out some problems here. I have content for future videos with these two repairs, and I have this extra Enhancer 2000 now, so I have two that are awesome. If anyone can figure out how to make Jiffy DOS work super reliably on these drives without that reseeking that it does, that would be amazing, because I'd love to upgrade both of these to have Jiffy DOS. But as it is, it's kind of nice that these do work. They run nice and cool. Although the biggest negative about the Enhancer 2000, it's got that big power brick, which is quite heavy. And I don't know if it gets hot. Yeah, it gets kind of warm. It's not burning hot, but it's warm. So maybe a little switch mode power supply with 5 volts and 12 volts would do a lot to make these drives a little bit more portable. So anyways, there you go. Thumbs up. If you didn't like it, you know what to do. Huge thanks to my supporters, all the other usual YouTube junk. And obviously you can see the Lisa stuff's all on the bench here. So I'm going to clean up all the disk drives and I'm going to be working on the Lisa. So that's why I have it all out here. Yeah, all the mail call stuff has been moved elsewhere. And there we go. So stay healthy, stay safe, and I will see you next time. Bye.